your screen?
Sure. I'm just bringing that up 1 second. Here we go.
Yeah, so welcome to VR Pistachio. We will run a poll shortly to find out how many of your members and a little bit about VR Pistachio. It is a community for relocating spouses, by relocating spouses. Jennifer, if you go on to the next slide.
Oh, yep. Sorry, my screen was a little slow there. Okay.
No worries, no worries. So what we offer at VR Pistachio is we offer upskilling opportunities. We offer mentoring, especially for relocating spouses who are looking at relaunching their career, and we offer networking opportunities just like this one. I hope that everybody joined in on time and got an opportunity to interact with each other. So we created this community for relocating spouses for precisely these 3 reasons. On to the next slide, Jennifer. My name is Deepali. I'm a co-founder at VR Pistachio. We have Aditi on the call as well, who's the founder of and chief relocating spouse at VR Pistachio. We have our team members. We have Pratiti, who's on the call, on this call. We have Aida, who's on this call. We have Sindhu, who's on this call. So it takes an army to run this community, but it's all well worth it. Yeah, so now coming to the main event, when coffee is not just coffee, we have Jennifer Kumar here, who's the managing director of Authentic Journeys. Jennifer has over a decade of experience coaching client-facing professionals who manage teams and projects, and especially in virtual environments. Jennifer understands some of the cultural missteps that professionals face. She herself lived in India as a relocating spouse for 10 years. She takes this experience to help teams and professionals, just like you and me, to kind of navigate successfully across cultures. Jennifer has a professional coaching certification from ICF, and she has over 750 coaching hours with close to 4,000 professionals whom she's coached. So welcome, Jennifer. We are indeed fortunate to have you here. So over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Fridays are always hopefully a nice day to think about how to spend our time. So we're going to think about how to build relationships today in a professional way. And it can be sometimes a little confusing in the sense of how to do it when you're in a different culture, and this culture being the US. So that's what I'm going to kind of focus on today. And I would like to know, maybe in the chat box, or if you want to verbalize it out loud, you can, maybe a couple of people can introduce themselves and share, what was something interesting that compelled you to attend this program today. So either you can speak up, we'll do this for a couple minutes, or you can write in the chat box, whichever you're most comfortable with. And I'll also bring up my chat box to see what people have to say. Some reason I'm not able to get the chat box up. Let me set my share screen for a second. Okay, would anyone like to introduce themselves?
I can start.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I'm here thanks to Deepali and Aditi. I've heard about We Are Pistachios, and people are very happy. Those that were lucky enough to attend the first session, the first semester. And I'm today because I found those coffee meetings, very awkward, and you just don't know. You need to be really open, and yet there are things you're just guessing. And it will be fantastic to hear from someone who's either experienced or heard and analyzed many of them and just knows the way around. Thank you.
Perfect. So I wrote in the chat, I'm here because I don't want to just guess. So that, yes, yeah, I totally get it. I totally get it. All right. A few other people would like to share out loud. And for those who don't get a chance to share out loud, if you could write in the chat box, at least one of the reasons why you decided to come today, that would be great. Who would like to?
I'll go.
Okay.
It was, I have in the past 4 or 5 years gone ahead and networked with people. What I struggle with is sustaining those connections. And I mean, I'm able to even like cold connect through through LinkedIn or however, but I really want to know how one sustains that network. What is, yeah, so that was it is on my goal for this year to learn to do that. And so I was so excited when this came up. I was like, yes, the timing is just perfect. So thank you. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. So Muncie, right? Did I pronounce your name right? So Muncie, yes, actually, I'll be talking about this closer to the end of today's session. That's really a critical element, is the follow-up piece. And I think we all can improve there because we get busy, we have so many things, and how do we actually kind of keep it on some kind of a schedule? So not that it has to be completely organized, but what's too much, what's not enough, something like along those lines. We'll definitely discuss that near the end. And I see Pratiti has mentioned that she feels awkward sometimes and she wants to know how to keep the conversation going. So yeah, we'll get a little bit into that, especially like we'll talk a little bit about small talk and other things that you can talk about. You can make small talk, and most of this is small talk actually, but it is professionally oriented, obviously. Let's see, I'm just also reading a couple others that came in the chat box. So she wants, Varsha would like to feel more authentic. Yeah, I mean, you know, even though I grew up in the US and maybe a few other people on the call have too, I think it depends on your personality and then how you know, kind of mesh up with the person you're going to meet. And I mean, some of us are introverted and some of us are more extroverted. So there's a lot that goes into it. And believe it or not, the other person sometimes is more nervous than they let on. So we're all humans, right? We're just two people sitting in a room trying to talk to each other. So yeah, when it's too much and how to understand when it's too much or maybe not enough, when to stop. So yeah, and to some extent we will talk to that point as well. Okay, in interest of time, I'll have one more person introduce themselves. Who would like to speak up?
I can go.
Okay, awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashmita. I guess I learned about We Are Pistachios. I kind of share the story. I mean, what is the gist of why this group was formed? Because I was one of those traveling spouses until my husband passed away a year ago. So I'm on a different journey right now. But I think, you know, I can relate to a lot of feelings and a lot of challenges that one finds themselves in when moving from country to country, different cultures. And even though I come from the same culture, like an Indian culture, the thing is, I actually was not born in India. So my culture is so much different to if I were born in India, just as an example. So I find myself like if I'm interacting with somebody who's from, I'm just using India because that's my, you know, thing. I find a lot of disconnect, a lot of like, okay, I don't understand. Why is this person saying this? Aren't we the same? So I find myself, you know, in those kind of situations and not sure how to react. So it looks like I accidentally came into the right place right now. So I'm eager to learn what you have to say.
Awesome. And yeah, that's a perfect thing to talk to some extent, Ashmita, is we all have overlapping identities. Even though some of us say we're from a certain place, that doesn't mean we identify with the behaviors or attitudes or way of interacting from that place, because we're so globalized nowadays. And most of us are doing networking in cities where people are more globalized generally. So yeah, that's an amazing consideration that we have to keep in mind when we're meeting people from other places. So thank you for bringing that up. And let me go back to my share screen. Okay, hopefully I get the right one. Okay, all right. So we're going to jump into the topic, and throughout the session, I'm going to try to also have us go into breakout rooms at some point to share our experiences with each other on a certain topic. So that will come up a little bit later from now. So these are kind of a few of the things that we'll be addressing in today's session. And some of them I've already mentioned. I'm not really going to read off the slide. I think you can see what's on the slide. But I do wanted to say we're kind of looking at how to get ready for that meeting, how to reach out to someone to request a meeting. We're going to look at that. That's actually going to take up a little more time than the actual meeting itself, because it's really important to be able to set the stage properly. Then how to prepare for the actual meeting, and then the follow-up, which some of you have asked about. All right, so the preparation, how to prepare for these. So, okay, how do we contact a person that we really don't know? Because in many of these cases, probably the people you're trying to reach out to network are people that you may not have had a connection with before, even if someone has introduced you to them or referred you to them. So maybe one person can share an answer to this question. Just think about it for a second. What's something that you have done when you've reached out to somebody that you didn't know?
So we have one answer here, Jennifer.
Okay, great.
They say
Yeah, I can't see
LinkedIn
my
connection.
chat. Sorry, go ahead.
LinkedIn connection.
Right. Okay. So yeah, we're going to actually look at some sample emails and even some chat in a thread, from an email thread. And all of these are from my actual real connections, and all except there's going to be 4 examples. One of them I did not actually reach out to the person for using that, so I've removed their identifying information. But on the others, I'm still friends with, business partners with, etc. So let's take a look at some of these. Oops, I have this slide in there. I'm going to come back to this. We're going to try to fill in the blanks. So what I want you to do is actually, as we're looking at some of these emails that I'm going to show you in just a second, take a note down of some of the things that people have said to me in those emails to start a conversation with me, okay? So here's a really good friend of mine. She contacted me when I lived in India. We did not have any prior connection before she sent me this message. And you can see the date on it. So we've known each other for a long time now. And she reached out to me. You could say it's like a cold email. No idea who I am, or even if I would talk to her. So just take a minute to read through it and take a note of anything that she might have said to me to forge a connection with me. This is a little longer example than the others, but take a minute just to read through it and take a note of some points. You can see actually there's a mix of kind of like small general talk and also more like a professional type of introduction or a professional type of small talk as well, which is completely natural actually and normal. I hope everyone's had a chance to read through it. I'll just wait one more minute, then I'll go to the next one. We'll compare our notes after going through the 4 examples. All right, so the next one. Now this is the one person I didn't have a chance to reach out to. I actually met this person in a webinar just like this more than 10 years ago. And he was impressed about something I had said during one of the breakout room type of sessions. There wasn't breakout rooms back then, but we had done some activities. He was really impressed about something I said, and then he reached out to network with me, and actually I ended up getting business from him. So this was the email that he sent to me. So you can take a note of something that he might have said here. All right, so I'll go to the next one. This one's a little bit longer. Now here, the context is a little different. Some of you want to know how to follow up. So this is, he's an American citizen. He was living in India. He was living in Bangalore, just as it mentions here. He was working at Microsoft. He had contacted me maybe actually 1 or 2 years before the date on this email. We had been in touch for quite some time, and we hadn't yet had a chance to meet. And this was just checking in. He's just checking in to see how I'm doing. He hadn't really asked for a meeting yet or anything. Ironically, when I reached out to him to ask him if I could use this email for this training program, he said, oh my gosh, you know, right after I sent that email, we got to meet in person. So yeah, I mean, sometimes these things take time. A lot of different circumstances happen. So we do have to be patient depending on the scenario. So you can note some of the things that we might have talked about here. Also, we take note at the structure of these emails. They're structured properly for business interaction. They have an opening, they have a body. Some of them have more than one paragraph, which would be important if you want it to be longer. Typically, to get in touch with someone for the first time, probably what Luis has done here is probably more appropriate than what Sam did. Sam did mention, oh, mine was really long. How did you take time to read through all that? But anyway, yeah, we usually start out with a little bit shorter messages, so we aren't feeling like we're wasting the other person's time. And now this is a different one, right? So Brent is a person I met through LinkedIn just before the pandemic hit, and he reached out to me first, actually. In fact, all of these 4 individuals reached out to me first. But this is just a totally kind of different example of how you build a conversation in LinkedIn. So the difference here is that we're not kind of giving away the store first. Like in some of those other emails, you're kind of building a lot more context in the actual message. But with LinkedIn, or even if you use Facebook or any other types of social media, it can be more appropriate to have it in more of a chat format. But the first initial interaction should have that same structure, that formal structure. So he's written, hi, Jennifer, comma. It wasn't just like a chat message. The consequent ones, you can see they're more like a chat message. Even though we have, for the most part, added our names into those, but we didn't have to close it. We didn't have to like put regards, or he used kind regards, which is also fine. He's in Canada, so they're a little different up there. But no, we just joke about that. Him and we joke about the differences between Canada and America. Yeah, so this is another example. All right. So coming back to this, what are some of the things you noticed in those emails that we could use to talk about in an email? Anyone has anything they want me to add here? What kind of topics did you notice?
So in Samantha's email, I like that she had a hook which said, this is kind of a long story, so let's catch up for coffee. So that was kind of a hook to probably meet up for coffee.
Okay, so had a hook. Okay. What else can I add here? What else did someone pick up in some of those emails? Something
similar stuff or mutual goals.
Mutual goals. Perfect. Anything else?
Intent.
Yeah.
Sorry. I meant to say they all showed the intent of meeting, not necessarily specifying a timeline, but specifying the intent clearly.
Okay. Well, perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, who was speaking? I couldn't see your face at the time. I'm only seeing a few people.
Yeah, this is Richa.
Richa. Okay, thank you. And I think Pratiti was also going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say a genuine interest in the opposite person by doing some research about them.
Ah. And you win. Okay, spelling is hard. Jen. That's right. A genuine interest in the other person. And yeah, I mean, that research part can be a delicate balance sometimes. So we want to be specific without being too specific too, because it's interesting. I've noticed that in Utah, when I've done a little research, general, like what you've seen in these emails, some people in Utah got a little offended. I was like surprised, because that's kind of what we're taught to do. And I'm talking about people who were born and raised in Utah. So there are definitely differences across the US. But I think, as Pratiti mentioned, tying it to the interest, mutual interest is, or mutual goal is really important. Anything else I can add here?
A proper structure, like there is a proper intro, what they want, and a proper closing. So that makes the transfer of information really easy.
Aha, I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of people actually don't think about that. But because it could be digested very quickly by the reader, it just builds that rapport so much quicker, right? So yeah. Perfect, I love that. Okay, what do we have? One more thing I can add here, anyone?
So in the first email, I thought she gave the other person, and she gave you an outlet that, you know, if it really feels strange to connect to a stranger, then it's okay. Like, I get that. And I feel like it takes the pressure off the other person. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I got enough here for this. Let me go back in. Now it's going to make me go through the whole animation here again. So good. We actually have feedback from the group. I'm so glad that everyone shared something, and there's many more things that could be added here. Obviously, in the interest of time, we're going to move forward. So I'm adding a few more things here, things I've done. I've quoted from their blog or their video, something that I really enjoyed reading or listening to. Or they had an interesting status update on their LinkedIn or some Twitter account or something like that. I want to know more about their role. Like, I'm really interested to network with people in that arena, in that particular area. And this is actually more for people who want to do informational interviews, like they want to break into a new career maybe, or they want to move up in their company and they want to network that way. Just letting the person know, you know, I'm thinking about this career, I'm thinking about this role, I'd really like to know more, or I'd like to know more about your company. Obviously, when we get into the actual meeting there with that person, if they agree to the meeting, we just have to ensure that we don't seem too pushy or too forward about asking for a job, so to speak. And everyone's faces are covering my screen there. So something in common that was mentioned. What do we have next? How can I help you, right? So a lot of us forget that because we're so concerned about, can they help me, or they have something I want or something, but how can I help you? Like, I really, I've reached out to people and just say, you know, I really love your, you know, I really love the writing on your blog. I'm also a blog writer. Can I share some blogs with you that might, you know, help your readership out as well? I see we write on similar topics. Some people may go for it and some people may not, but, you know, how can I help you is always nice. Or even like in the case, you know, here we are, and we're actually in this situation right now. So Deepali and Aditi reached out to me and asked them if I could help them with a webinar. So, I mean, that was like a perfect way to actually network, right? Because what better way to flatter someone than say, hey, I see you do something really well, and can you help us out with that? And to learn about their career path. How did you get to this place where you are right now? And that's kind of connected to the one on the left, the other side of the slide. All right, so how do we nail down a time? How do we actually know, how do we ask for that? So some of you noticed some of these things in the emails earlier. I'm going through it one more time with those sections highlighted. And just like, I think it was it Aditi you mentioned about the escape plan? Was it you that mentioned that? Someone mentioned about that, I forget.
That was Varsha.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry?
Which one? Sorry, I'm
About the fact that someone could have the way out if they didn't really want to.
That was Varsha. That was
Varsha. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so that's what I'm highlighting here, what Varsha had talked to earlier. So yeah, I know you're probably quite busy, so if you don't have time, but I'd still like to connect with you. So, either way would have worked out for her. So this is kind of a generic way to nail down a time. There are so many conflicting pieces of advice out there on this. Some say, oh, if you really want to network, you be specific about the time you're available. And then some others say, well, you don't want to be too pushy. And you're asking for something from somebody else, so you should leave it open to them to decide when they're available. So it's hard to always say which one is the right way to go. Go with your intuition, what you feel, if you want to build a conversation first and then ask, or you want to be specific, and ask like kind of straight out of the gate. Like right here, Wayne asked about it pretty much straight out of the gate. He didn't mention a time frame, he mentioned a day, but that was actually because of the context. We had kind of talked about it in the webinar first. That's how we had networked initially, through a webinar. So that situation is slightly different. The next one, where Luis was like, let's stay in touch, maybe our paths will cross in the near future. And of course, we ended up meeting like basically a few months right after that. So sometimes you put the intention out in the universe, and the universe gives you your gift, right? And we're still in touch. So that's like such a perfect example. And this one has actually no call to action type of thing. It's not mentioning when do you want to meet, when do you want to get together. It's very open-ended. But we had continued the conversation. So we were kind of chatting back and forth. And even from the timestamps on this, you can see that, it was probably over several days that we had this chat. And I think within a week of starting the chat, we organized a Zoom call, and we got online and we started chatting. So this kind of takes off a lot of pressure too, because when you're chatting with somebody on LinkedIn first, you kind of get to know them a little bit before you're actually talking to them. And because you've already exchanged so many messages, maybe you might have exchanged many messages with them. I think Brent and I exchanged around 20 or so messages before we actually got into a call. All right, so let's see what we have next. So that's some of the ways you can try to nail down a time. And this is just a timeline of how do you get started. Sending the message the day before to confirm that you're still available. If you are meeting in person, you might want to find a way to indirectly, how can I stay in touch with you in case I am late? We don't want to ever directly ask an American for their phone number. They get a little weird about it. So indirectly, if you ask them, if they offer that to you, then you're all set. Otherwise, they probably just say, send me an email. I have my email on my phone, something along those lines. And if you're meeting on a Zoom call, then, by email, ping them in advance, or on LinkedIn, if you're in touch with them before, you can say, in case you have any problems logging into Zoom, just, ping me here on LinkedIn a couple minutes in advance, so I know that, you're able to get in or not. And then prepare. You want to prepare. You want to look professional. You don't want to go in and obviously going in jeans and a t-shirt. What I'm wearing kind of works pretty well. It's a general professional dress. You don't want to dress. They say that you typically don't want to overdress the person that you're meeting with, but you can never guess what they're dressed like. So if you just kind of take the general professional dress code, and you can just use that to your advantage. And of course, if it's Zoom, you only have to worry about your shirt. So I don't think you're going to be standing up on Zoom. But if you're going to be meeting them, then obviously you want to take care with, not wearing jeans, probably. I mean, it can depend on your industry too, because obviously IT industry, they're more casual. And so you want to go with the dress code of your industry as well, or the industry you want to get into. And you want to kind of be middle of the road, not too overdressed and not underdressed. And you want to prepare your talking points and practice if possible. So that's what we're going to use some time right now to kind of do. Let's see. I lost my touch with the PowerPoint just a second. Okay, so we did part one. Now we're going to be into part two, the actual meeting, right? So best practices. Unless you need to change the meeting, there's no need to contact the person on the day of the meeting, usually in the US. This is a cultural difference. In some countries, they want you to contact them the day of just to reconfirm or double confirm the meeting. But in the US, you really don't have to do that. Although there are regional differences. People in Utah have reconfirmed with me on the day of. And I'm talking about in-person meetings and not generally Zoom calls. And you always want to be early. You don't want them to have to wait for you. That's the rule of thumb. If they're waiting for you, probably you've set the wrong impression. So you should be the one who's there first. And if you are meeting in a coffee shop or something, I learned this the hard and uncomfortable way because I also sometimes don't know how the etiquette's changed or from place to place. In New York, it was always like, if you're in a networking meeting, you're purchasing your own drink or your own coffee. But I found out in Utah that the other person can treat you. That is part of the culture here in Utah. And I didn't know that. And I was taken off guard for that. So I now, if I'm meeting somebody in person, which I have not done for a year, but if I were, I would be there early and I would buy my own drink to avoid that. For me, it's an uncomfortable situation if someone else purchases it for me. Now, technology problems, like I said, that's the one important thing. Why the day before, just let them have an alternative. I'll ping you on LinkedIn or I'll ping you on Facebook or wherever, some other digital platform. So in case you are also having problems, they don't think that you are ignoring them. That's really important. And I already talked to the last point there. All right. So if you are meeting in person, obviously nowadays we're not really handshaking. Has anyone met anyone in person recently?
No.
No. No, okay. So we don't know what people are actually doing out there. I've heard fist bumps, seen elbow bumps, I've seen all kinds of things, but I've never done them yet, or I have not done them yet. So otherwise it would always be a handshake, whether you're meeting someone of the same gender, a different gender, or older than you, younger than you, it's always a handshake in the US. And when you're in networking meetings, it's completely acceptable to have something to drink and sometimes even eat, which is really weird in some cultures. But in the US, it's completely natural. You don't have to eat if you feel uncomfortable. But if you go into a coffee shop and you don't have a coffee, some people might find that odd, maybe, I don't know. But me personally, I wouldn't go into a business and not purchase something. So it's just something to consider if and when you have to meet someone face to face. We don't tend to do networking meetings in like parks or very casual places like that. So it would, if it's out in public, it would be like a coffee shop, or I've done networking meetings at restaurants too, like a lunch meeting or something along those lines. Which is completely natural in that situation. All right, let's see. We've already talked about this, the first point anyways. And the second one is, if you are kind of trying to connect with somebody and you know people in their network or know of people in their network, I personally avoid asking about this in the first meeting. Unless they broach the topic, but then me personally, I still would be vague about it. Oh, such and such. Oh yeah, that person's really interesting. I know that they do this kind of work, and I'm also interested in that. Like I would kind of be indirect about it. I don't, me personally, I don't think I would come out directly and ask. Some people do, but that's just my personality, I guess. And we don't want to, do a lot of name dropping. We can do. So name dropping means, oh yeah, my friend Luis actually asked me to contact you for this networking meeting today. So I'm really happy about that. That's kind of a different name dropping because we're already in the meeting. But if you're name dropping to try to build your network or other things that seem kind of, I don't know how to articulate it, pushy maybe, then you might want to reconsider that approach. And you don't want to lean on brand names like, oh yeah, I really worked for some really big companies like X, Y, and Z. I mean, people may have seen your resume already, but you don't want to overstate it or brag too much. So a lot of people get confused because they feel like, okay, we've heard Americans actually talk about a lot about their accomplishments. So wouldn't this just be talking about your accomplishments? I think there's a fine line. And if you want to take that discussion offline with me, I'm definitely happy to do that with you and discuss maybe some of those, finer points of how we tend to manage that situation in this particular type of networking event. All right. All right. So now we're going to do a breakout room for a little bit. So Aditi or Dipali, how many people do we have online?
So there are 14 of us, Jennifer.
All right, so I think, we'll do breakout rooms of Aditi and Dipali and I don't think we need to be in a breakout room. Or do you want to be? That's fine if you do. I don't need to be in a breakout room. I don't know if you want to interact with the rest of the participants. That's up to you. Usually as a facilitator, I don't go into the breakout room. I'll have you put the breakout room in place and then they will discuss the points and then we'll come back in and then discuss.
Let's stay in the main room.
Okay, that's fine with me.
So for the rest, we'll just create a breakout room.
Okay, so yeah, 3 people per breakout room. So what I'll do is with the person or people in your breakout room, I want you to kind of draft what you would say when you first come in. So when you first meet the person, you have to introduce yourself. That's kind of the most nerve-wracking time, right? So hello, my name is, and then some acknowledgement statement. Like I might say, my personal one is, let's say I'm meeting Luis, my friend Luis. We just use the first name typically. So, hi Luis, I'm Jennifer. It's so nice that you had time to meet with me today for a little while. So I just want you to kind of get into your breakout rooms and kind of talk about it for a couple minutes. How would you actually introduce yourself in that first interaction when you're just seeing the person? So we'll give you, this is a short one. So how about we do it for, 4 minutes or so? How's that sound, Aditi and Dipali?
4 sounds good, Jennifer. Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
I'm just going ahead and creating those, Jennifer.
Perfect.
And you said 2 per room?
We'll do 3. We'll do 3.
Okay. All
right. 2 or 3, depending on the math, how you can break it out.
Okay, got it. So I'm just preparing. Okay, 1 second. Okay, I think. All right, I think we have got it. I've got 3 per room. Yep, except we have got to do 1 more. 1 room might have 4.
Okay.
I think that would work too.
Actually, I'll just move. Give me 1 second. Okay, so there are 2 rooms of 2 and 3 rooms of 3. All right, so I'm gonna open that up with Jennifer. You'll keep time, and if anybody needs help with anything, you can just call the host and we can come in, right? So I'm opening up the rooms right now.
But I wanted to address also the chats. I'm sorry, I couldn't see the chats while doing the presentation. So I did want to address that. Then I want to talk about follow-up, and then we'll have time for question and answer. And if we can stay a little bit later, then I can, you know, get your feedback from the breakout rooms as well. So I apologize that everything just seemed to be going so fast during this session. So it's like we just started. All right, so in the chats, I'm sorry that I couldn't go along as we were talking about it. So some of the context I've missed. Let me see. Someone did mention they did ask for a phone number and that was awkward. Yeah, so I think that, oh, Sindhu, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately you learn the hard way. But if we forget, we can just apologize. That's okay. People, I'm sorry, you know, I'm just, we're all new here to this. If you're uncomfortable with that, we can find another way to stay in touch, no problem. And let's see. And then Yolanda mentioned that, yeah, you can give them your phone number. So yeah, that's completely appropriate because if you're doing it and you're not asking someone to do it or they haven't asked you, if you're offering information, that's always wonderful. So I appreciate that insight, Yolanda. That's really important for everyone to know about. Let's see. Let's see. Aditi, you had a comment in there. I always wondered about point 1. I would always do it and then realized it wasn't required. I can't remember the context to that one. Oh, you might be on mute.
That was a reminder on the day off. So we discussed.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. I think I've addressed everyone. Someone else, and I'm sorry if I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly. Jinska, I'm sorry.
Agnes, yes.
You mentioned not so much in Seattle. I'm not sure. What was that in reference to something specific?
Handshake.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
It's not really a requirement. I don't remember handshaking anyone here. You just meet a person.
So you know what? This might be regional differences too. Like I know on the East Coast, it's been more appropriate to do that. I've been in Utah for 3 years and I'm still learning so many differences here than New York. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I think we just look at others and try to emulate what they do. If they put out their hand first, then obviously a handshake would make sense. And now obviously everything before the pandemic. Now everything's changed. So, and it might depend on the industry as well. And Yolanda also mentioned that it's safer to meet outside because of the pandemic. I would agree if you get a chance to meet at this time, because I think that was in reference to meeting at parks. So things may have changed in that regard because of, you know, being in the situation that we're in. Yolanda, I don't know if you wanted to add to that. Do you know anyone who's actually networked during this time in the during the pandemic? They've met in person?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to meet anyone in person either. So don't know what people are doing out there, but I know I'm not one of them. So, okay, so yes, let me get back. There's just a few more points. I should have been wrapped up by now with question and answer, but I'm hoping that everyone is still finding this very engaging. So I want to just wrap it up with the follow-up, which is always important. So follow-up. You always want to follow up. If you don't follow up and you want to contact that person later, they just won't remember who you are and you kind of have to start over from the beginning. Some people might get offended if you don't follow up too. So these are some of the best practices, and other people can share others that, you know, they might have experienced or might they might be using as well, as far as follow-up. So one business day, send a thank you email to the person. Always thank people for their time. You cannot do that enough in American culture. Thank people for their time and add something interesting that was discussed during that time. So especially when you do that in email, the good thing is now you have that written down as a reminder for yourself too, because you might meet a lot of people and everyone has something unique to remember them by. So I always also suggest people to keep notes on who you meet. I know that sounds a little bit weird. I mean, you know, I run my own business and I'm networking with so many people. So I always have to remember who is where, when, and what's interesting about them, because I don't remember hundreds of people that I interact with. It's impossible. Some people have a really good memory, but unfortunately, I'm not in that camp. Mention how you can help them. So maybe during your conversation, they actually did talk about something and you realize, oh, I have the skill to help out with that. Not toward a job wise per se all the time, but at least, you know, something, you know, that if they need some like assistance with something, or you can connect them with somebody else in your network, always good. And that just ties into the third point there. And one more slide here. So keep in touch with a message once in a quarter. So, or once in 6 months, or once in a year. It depends on how, you know, you're, you know, connected with this person. With each person I'm connected with, it's so different. And, or if they're, you know, there's certain holidays that they really like. You met someone and they're like really obsessed with the 4th of July. So that's when you should maybe give them wishes. Or, you know, they're from a different country or a different culture, like so many people here on this call are. You might all celebrate, you know, different holidays that aren't necessarily American holidays, which is completely awesome. And I would reach out to people like, yesterday was a South Indian and definitely Indian holiday, and one of the names that goes by is Pongal. So people who celebrate that I know, I would reach out to them and say happy Pongal or happy whatever the name is in their part of India. And you can ask them to follow them on LinkedIn, but not so much on Facebook. Americans are sometimes a little bit strange about Facebook because they often think it's much more personal. Not the case in other countries. When I lived in India, it was very important to connect on Facebook. In fact, some people got offended when I didn't want to connect on Facebook. But in the US, they might get offended if you want to connect on Facebook. Yes, does someone have a comment? I know we're almost at 2 o'clock. This is one more point here, and that's just ties back. Don't ask for their WhatsApp. WhatsApp isn't so popular in the US as some of you probably know, but there are definitely people using that. But because it's tied to your actual mobile number, people don't tend to want to give that number out. But you can give your number if you feel comfortable, as Yolanda mentioned. That's like a perfect piece of advice there. So this was my presentation, and sorry, it's kind of like all kind of pushed in at the end. Feel like a tidal wave of information there. And it's exactly time. So if you have another meeting, I totally understand if you have to jump off. Probably I'm breaking my rule of networking by going over time here, but I'm happy to stay back if anyone has any questions or insights they want to share, or something that you talked about during your breakout room.
Hi, this is Richa again.
Hi.
Yeah, so I had mentioned that in my introductory chat as well, and it was something that we came across in our breakout room as well. The thing that I'm interested to know, and if I can get some idea from you, that would be really helpful, is how to actually like there can be occasions where with the colleagues that I'm working, I'm not directly working with them every single day, but like I do see them at the workplace, and when I'm interacting with them after like a month or so, I want to start a conversation, and so I'm trying to look for ways how to start that. Usually, like I resort to starting with talking about the weather or the place, like the some game or something. But can you give some ideas how usually, like how can, if it's like meeting that same person again over time, how to make the conversation interesting and keep it also professional?
Right. So before I answer, I want to throw it out to the audience. Does anyone else here have any tips or strategies you've used that could help Richa? I'm not the only one here with wisdom. So somebody else, anyone else have any thoughts on that? How can we continue conversations with those in our network to make it lively, interesting, like we're continuing a conversation with someone that we know rather than it feels like a brand new conversation every time? Anyone have any ideas?
So the one thing that has helped me is how they've navigated their life in COVID and how they've kept themselves sane. That seems to be a great way to start, and a common connection point with pretty much everywhere. So that's something I've used.
Yes, I think that's perfect, especially in these days. Yes. Anyone else have anything they want to add?
Maybe bring up something which you discussed last time, and connect to what they have to say on that, or how is it going on that aspect, or something like that.
Yes, I mean, that was going to be my number one go-to thing too. Yeah, so that's why it's always good to kind of take notes and remember. Obviously, you don't have your notes with you all the time, but we're just continuing a relationship is basically what networking over time is. How do you manage your relationships with your best friends or family members you haven't seen in a long time? It's basically almost the same thing. Of course, we want to keep it more general and we keep some of the other topics out of it. For instance, and you can take a screenshot of this. I'm just going to bring this up real quick. I didn't have time to go into it in today's presentation, but small talk topics. So there's always acceptable topics, cautionary topics, and avoidable topics. So you can always lean toward the acceptable topics and something that's recent, and I'm sorry, I forget who mentioned about the pandemic. Was it Varsha? Who just mentioned?
That's right.
Yeah. So as Varsha mentioned, you ask about the pandemic. So many people are, using Netflix or streaming services. So that comes under movies or TV shows or whatever, right? Under acceptable topics. So you can come in and say, hey, I haven't seen you I haven't talked to you for a while. Like, how are you spending time during the pandemic? Actually, I've been streaming a lot of movies on Netflix. How about you? Do you have any go-to TV shows or movies that you're watching? And yeah, perfect. So you can definitely take a screenshot of this. We don't have time to go through it obviously right now, but
I wanted to add.
This has been helpful. Thank you.
And I wanted to add that pets are a good topic if you know that someone has pets, because this is neutral enough and it's usually a beloved companion.
Exactly. And actually pets is listed last under acceptable. There's a funny reason for that. Actually, when I first made this slide, and I used to give this presentation, small talk topics, in India for a long, long time, and pets was never on the list. And then someone actually came up in the session and said, hey, pets is like the only thing that I can talk about with my US colleague. They don't even talk about their kids or their spouse, but they'll always talk about their pets. So, and I found that very ironic and interesting. So then I'm like, yes, I better add that to the list.
Jennifer, I agree. But whenever there is a meeting and there are Americans only, everyone brings the cats, up to the camera. And I always feel, I just don't go hunt for my kids and like, look. So yes, that's definitely important. It's high on priority list.
Agreed.
No emotions, no bad emotions.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I think Anaga, I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing your name right.
Agnieszka, but I go by Agnes.
Oh,
hi, Jennifer. This is Anaga.
Anaga, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for the presentation, and I'm sorry I can't turn on the camera on my phone. I have a question on the follow-up slide that you just showed. And I see something that we avoid is, the money or the salary conversation. Now, I am an investment advisor by the profession, and a lot of my times it's my profession and the networking. So, I mean, I don't ask anybody for the investments in the first meeting, definitely. But what are some tips in networking, keeping my profession in the mind and getting that rapport going?
Yeah, because obviously money is under the avoidable topics here and prices of things. So yeah, I just brought that back up for a second. So there's always going to be exceptions based on your industry. And if you are networking with somebody and you know that somebody wants to talk about money, my personal thought is bring it up, first in an indirect way, or maybe a general open-ended question like, I am an investor. Are there any specific questions you wanted to ask me about, money management? Like put the kind of, as we say in the US, put the ball in their court. So you're not putting them on the spot with anything specific. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay, maybe not.
Well,
right
thank
now.
you, Jennifer. No,
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, I hope that helps answer your question, at least one possible way to handle that situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Anything else anyone has today?
Well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Jennifer. Jennifer, would you just share the last few slides?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. I forgot about that.
No
yes.
worries. I just wanted to quickly run everybody by.
Yes, no problem. Yes.
So yeah, these are the few events that are coming up with VR Pistachio. We have a webinar on immigration matters. So you have any questions related to your employment visa related matters, Saloni Alakhani, who's a global mobility expert with Kimberly Clark, she would be answering all your questions. So that's the event that's coming on 25th of January. And immediately after that, the next one, Jennifer, on to the next slide.
Sorry, yes.
We are coming up with a PMP accountability pod. Now this PMP pod is an 8-week pod in which we have 4 group sessions, 4 accountability sessions, 1 session with mentor to review the PMP application, and we'll create a private community where we will share all the resources and all the pod members could interact with each other, make sure you stay the track and complete your PMP certification. So, accountability pod is a great way to actually go ahead and achieve the goal. So if PMP certification is what you're looking for, please go ahead and, become a part of this program. We will send out the details to you shortly. So these are the 2 events that are coming up. And once again, thank you everyone for attending. I see that most of the people are already members of VR Pistachio, but keep in touch, visit the group often to see what's the latest happening with VR Pistachio. And Jennifer, I can't thank you enough. I know it should have been probably like a 2-hour session, but probably we will plan one shortly. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, time and expertise. It was really insightful. And like I said to you in between, I wish, somebody did this session for me as soon as I had moved. That would have, saved me a whole lot of embarrassment and heartache. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you.
I hope it's a little helpful to someone out there. So thank you everyone for your participation and coming in on a Friday afternoon. So happy to have you.